Hello friends, welcome to EduTap. If you can hear me, if the audio is clear and the video is clear, please give me a thumbs up in the comment section. We are here to discuss descriptive component of economics and social issues for RBI Grade B 2021 examination. Economic history of India is an important chapter. So far in this series of videos, we have talked about poverty alleviation and employment generation in India. We have also spoken about sustainable development and environmental issues. And now in this particular video, we are going to talk about economic history of India. So I hope that you can hear me, the audio is clear and the video is clear. Please give me a thumbs up in the comment section. We'll quickly move ahead and discuss this very important chapter. I'll give you a brief overview of all that is important in this chapter. We'll also be discussing how we should approach our studies so that we are able to perform well in the descriptive answer writing section of the examination. And we'll also be discussing with you a question, right? So that you are in a position to tackle that kind of a question in the examination. So everything looks fine to me over here. So let us begin our discussion. So EduTap's YouTube channel is a very helpful channel for students preparing for various competitive examinations. So I would request you to please subscribe to our EduTap channel so that you can EduTap's YouTube channel so that you can be updated regarding various examinations. We have a Telegram channel on which we are sharing notes related to all the lectures, all the videos that we are providing on our YouTube channel. So do subscribe to our Telegram channel so that you can access the notes related to each and every video that we are providing to you, right? So do join these channels. This is our EduTap's Hall of Fame. We have been able to produce consistent results in RBI Grade B, NABARD Gr A as well as SEBI Grade A examinations, right? In recent result for NABARD Grade A was declared, and in this result, out of 69 results, 65 have been claimed by EduTap. 65 of EduTap students have been able to clear a rank. That is the kind of success that we are enjoying thanks to the effort put in by team, thanks to the effort put in by students, and by the grace of God, we have been able to produce these great results, right? So if you're preparing for any of these examinations, you should consider enrolling in our courses. We have courses for RBI Grade B, NABARD Grade A, NABARD Grade B, SEBI Grade A, EPFO, AO, EO, as well as many other courses and many other combo courses. So you should join in these courses if you are preparing for these examinations, right? So everybody who is present, good evening to all of you. I request you to please give me a thumbs up in the comment section, right? So I hope that everything is clear. The audio is clear and the video is clear. So let us move ahead and discuss the economic history of India. So friends, when we talk about the economic history of India, we have to keep in mind that we have to know what was the status of Indian economy, right, on the eve of India's independence. So approximately during 1947, what was the status? And we should also know that what we have been doing so far as our economy is concerned, or how have we been able to develop our economy post 1947 downwards, right? So that is what we are going to discuss. So if you are talking about Indian economy on eve of independence, right, you should be able to clearly mention that we were having a very low level of economic development. And what do I mean by having a low level of economic development? We were not a very advanced economy. We were not having very much, we were not having a good technology base. We did not have a good industrial base. We were not self-sufficient. We were not great exporters of finished goods. It is not as if that our national income was very high. It is not as if that our per capita income was very high. It is not as if that our people were enjoying good standard of living. It is not as if that our standards of human development were good in the sense that we were having good health indicators, educational indicators, social indicators, right? So we were basically having a low level of economic development on the eve of independence. We had a very stagnant agricultural base. What do I mean by having a stagnant agricultural base? So India's agricultural production had not increased much, right? 50 years prior to independence, if you see, hardly there was increment in India's agricultural production. Even if there was any incremental production in agricultural sector, that was offset by increase in population. So because of the fact that our population growth was so high, even if there was a meager increase in India's agricultural production, that was not really much. So agriculture was stagnant also because there was hardly any investment that was being undertaken in the agriculture sector. You have to be able to point out that there were zamindars, there were landlords, there were all kinds of problems in India's agriculture sector. There was over dependence on agriculture in the sense that since there were hardly any employment opportunities in, let us say, industrial sector or in the services sector of the economy. So a large section of India's population, more than 85% of India's population, was dependent upon agriculture, and people were by and large very poor, and their ability to invest in improving the fertility of their farmland was was heavily restricted because of their poverty. Therefore, what we were having was a stagnant agriculture sector on which a huge section of population was dependent. We had a very narrow industrial base. What is the meaning of having a very narrow industrial base? Few sectors in which we were able to have some industries were like, cotton or jute, or maybe some amount of chemicals, or some amount of, let us say, there was Tisco, that is Tata Iron and Steel Company. Few amount of firms operating in, let us say, glass. Few amount of firms operating in, very selected sectors, right? We did not have a base of capital industries, in the sense that it is not as if that India was able to produce the machinery that was required by our industries. So all the machinery that we were needing, we were basically importing it from other countries. So we were dependent for basic machineries, for heavy goods, we were dependent on other countries. More importantly, we were not able to produce all the things that we wanted for ourselves. More importantly, industries were located in few centers. So you had industries located in few metropolitan centers, right? For example, you can say Bombay, Madras, or Calcutta, of that, and many more other centers. But it is not as if that we were able to have a regionally well distributed setup of industries. That is not something which was available to us, right? So the industrial base was pretty narrow. It was pretty weak. Lopsided foreign trade, in the sense that Britishers had reduced India to being an exporter of raw material and importer of finished goods, right? To sort of, why? Because they wanted to take away India's raw material at very, very cheap costs, and they wanted to sort of sell their finished goods or goods which were produced in their industries at a very, very fancy price in Indian market. That is what their agenda was. That is what their intention was. So the idea is that this kind of a lopsided foreign trade India was having. More importantly, India was having majority of its trade with Great Britain. So there was a huge need to diversify trade, and there was a huge need to stop exporting raw materials away and importing finished goods. We have to sort of, manufacture things ourselves. If you are a student of economics, you understand that what is the importance of manufacturing, what is the importance of carrying out production ourselves. Because if we are manufacturing goods that we need, if we are carrying out productions ourselves, we will be able to create jobs in our country, and you know that we need jobs in our country. So the lopsided foreign trade is something that I've explained to you. Abysmal demographic conditions, you look at any indicator, you look at life expectancy, you look at literacy, you look at the, the body mass index, if the data is available, you look at absolutely any indicator that is available, and you will be able to see that, the status of our population, the standard of living of our population was pretty low. Lopsided occupation structure is something that I've already explained to you. More than 80% of people being dependent on agriculture. That is a lot of people dependent on agriculture. There was hardly any industrial sector. There was hardly any services sector. And of course, there was an infrastructural deficit. Why? Because the Britishers were never interested in developing industrial corridors in India. They were never interested in developing, absolutely fabulous R&D infrastructure in India, or absolutely fabulous, healthcare infrastructure in India, or let us say education infrastructure in India, or let us say, they were not interested in connecting, absolutely every village to town, so that, regional development could be brought about. They were not interested in developing, electricity lines, so that, power could be supplied to all the homes across India. That was never their agenda. Their agenda was basically to suck India's wealth out of India and take it to Britain as much as possible. Therefore, the kind of infrastructure that got developed was developed to assist the colonial exploitation that India was subjected to in the 2 centuries in which we were basically being ruled by Britishers, right? So if railway lines were established, if telegraph was established, if certain roads were built, right, that was built so that raw material could be taken out of India and finished goods could be inserted into India, so that military could be mobilized as fast as possible, so that police and military could remain connected in difficult times. These were the ideas which sort of drove the infrastructure development in India. It is not as if that they established a network of canals across the length and breadth of the country so that productivity of agriculture could be improved. No, that was never done. So the idea is that at the time of independence, we had to take care of all these things. We had to take care of low level of economic development. We had to take care of the agriculture sector, the industrial sector. We had to take care of foreign trade. We had to give good standards of living to our population so that our demographic conditions can improve. Obviously, we wanted to change the lopsided nature of occupational structure, and we wanted to create infrastructure for our country, right? Right. So Ashwini Kumar, hello to all of you, right? I'm hoping that you all are understanding what you are discussing, right? So Indian economy on eve of independence, this was the status. Now we have discussed all of these things as a part of our course material. As a part of our course for the descriptive section of the examination, we have provided a fodder material as well as a descriptive question answer set, right? So we have provided these two documents so that you can prepare well for the examination. Moving ahead, the time we got independence, we decided that we are going to sort of have a planning infrastructure in place. We are going to sort of, plan our way out of underdevelopment. So we adopted 5-year planning from Soviet Union, right? And what are the goals of 5-year plans? If you were asked that, what is it that 5-year plans sought to achieve? So they sought to achieve, broadly speaking, growth of the economy, modernization of the economy, self-reliance economy, and equity within the economy. These are the broad goals, right, which were our guiding principles after 1947, let us say. Right. So when we were planning, so why is it that we were planning? That is very important to understand, that why is it that we need to plan, right? So a very simple rule of economics is that, there is always going to be scarcity. What is the meaning of that? Economy is considered to be a science of scarcity. What is the meaning of that? That always there is going to be, more demands than resources which are available to fulfill those demands. So even if you look at the level of country, so we told you that, we had to take care of agriculture, we had to take care of industry, we had to take care of infrastructure, we had to take care of demography, we had to take care of this, we had to take care of that, right? We had so many needs, we had so many pressing problems, but paisa kahan tha? Resources kahan the? Resources were meager and challenges were too many, right? So there comes the requirement of planning. We have to decide that which challenge we want to tackle when, how do we want to deploy our resources so that we are in a position to tackle our most important challenges. So which are our most important challenges? Which priority should be number 1? What should be number 2 priority? What should be number 3 priority? So that we are able to deploy our resources and we are able to take care of our problems, right? So that is the answer to all these questions कि कितना पैसा कहाँ किस चीज के ऊपर खर्च करना है, कैसे खर्च करना है, एंड क्या गोल्स को हमारे को कब कैसे अचीव करना है. ऑल दीज क्वेश्चंस वर आंसर्ड बाय वे ऑफ 5-year plans. So in the first 5-year plans our focus was X, in second 5-year plan our focus was Y, in third 5-year plan our focus was Z. So what is this X, Y and Z? So these are various needs of our economy, right? But broadly speaking, across all the plans we see that there were certain things common, that we wanted to bring about growth, that is that we wanted to increase the capacity of the economy to produce, we wanted to increase our GDP, we wanted to bring about modernization of the Indian economy. That means that we wanted to ensure that good technology is available for various sectors of the economy, and modernization even of our social outlook, right? We have to move away from gender bias, we have to move away from casteism, we have to move away from communalism, we have to move away from all these kind of parochial mindsets and viewpoints which sort of hold our development back and are probably still holding our development back. So modernization was also on the agenda of 5-year plans. Self-reliance was also a very, very important agenda of 5-year plans. Today we are talking suddenly about Atmanirbhar Bharat for various reasons, good or bad, right? At that point of time we were talking about making India self-reliant. You have to understand that any country which has recently emerged and has gotten its independence, it would not like to be dependent on foreign countries for critical needs. It would like to be dependent on itself. It would like to fulfill its own needs by itself. Why? Because I do not want to be dependent on any outsider for my critical needs, because if I am dependent on an outsider for my critical needs, the outsider can probably manipulate me, the outsider can probably take advantage of my dependence. So to that extent, we adopted policies of import substitution. Why? Because we wanted to ensure that जो हमारी ज़रूरत है उसको हम खुद पूरा कर सकें, so that our sovereignty, our independence, our self rule is intact, right? And then the other agenda was equity. I have mentioned to you that it is not as if that India was a very rich country or India was a very developed country. A huge section of our population was living either below the poverty line or at the poverty line or very close to the poverty line, right? Their asset ownership was very, very poor. They were in a very, very weak situation economically, socially, physically, in every which manner. Therefore, we did not just want to bring about growth and development in the country. We wanted our growth and development to be equitable, meaning that everybody, even the last man in the line, should be able to benefit from the process of growth and development. That basically means that we want to reduce inequality, we want to reduce poverty, we want to uplift masses above the poverty line so that they can have a good standard of living. Because ultimately that is what independence was all about. Independence was all about giving a good life to our people. So after independence, these were certain goals which were guiding us. If I have to take a broad sweep of what happened in the agriculture sector from, let us say, 1950 to 1990, so I would like to discuss a few important points with you. We conceptualized, or we were not the first ones, but yeah, in India we conceptualized this idea of land reforms, of bringing out land reforms in agriculture sector. So when you talk about land reforms, you have to particularly talk about 3 or 4 reforms that we wanted to implement as a part of land reforms. We wanted to place a ceiling on the maximum ownership of land that one can have. Why? Because if I am having too much land, much more land than I need, much more land than I deserve, right? Much more land than is what is socially correct, right? Then my land will, the surplus land or the excess land or land above particular maximum limit will be taken away, and it will be distributed amongst those who are landless. So you have to link this with the problem of equity, right? That if too much land concentration, the ownership of land is concentrated in too few hands, that will leave a lot of people landless. And if people are landless, that means that they do not have any asset. And when they do not have any asset, probably their life situation will be very precarious, right? We wanted to bring about abolition of intermediaries. Intermediaries meaning zamindars. Why? Because zamindars were not contributing absolutely anything towards development of agriculture in India, you may say, and therefore they were one of the most hated classes, and therefore it was really important to abolish zamindari system. We wanted to bring about tenancy reforms so that if I am a tenant, and if I am basically taking a land on rent from you and I'm tilling the land, so it should not happen that you are exploiting me. It should not happen that you are taking away almost the entire surplus of production. I should be left with something. I should get a decent return for all the effort, for all the hard work that I have put into the land. And the fourth agenda was land consolidation, in the sense that bringing small group of farmers together into, let us say, a collective, so that they can come together, they can sort of pool their resources, they can sort of pool their efforts, and are able to sort of bring about economies of scale in their production. So these were some of the agendas that were sort of the driving force behind land reform. How successful were land reforms? Were they very successful? Not really. Abolition of intermediaries was a very successful measure, because zamindars across the length and breadth of the country were despised, they were hated, right? So abolition of intermediaries went across well, but other land reforms were not implemented in a very good manner. Economic history of India ke andar we need not discuss this in detail, because we can probably touch upon this when we talk about agriculture, but you should have some idea about what was successful and what was not successful. The other important idea that we need to talk about Indian agriculture is green revolution, right? You know that in India we were not having agriculture was not a very strong sector, in the sense that we were not completely self-reliant even for our own food requirement. So we had to depend upon other countries, particularly countries like United States of America, to fulfill our food requirement, to fulfill our cereal requirements. So if I am India and let us say you are United States of America, and I come to you to import, let us say, asking for wheat or asking for cereals. So yes, you are ready to give me wheat. Yes, you are ready to help me out by exporting food to me. But in return, what do you want? In return, you want India to support your foreign policy. In return, you want India to support your aggression in Vietnam. In return, you want India to distance itself from Soviet Union. That basically means that you want to dictate to India that what should India's foreign policy be, what should India's stance on critical matters be. Is that sovereignty? Is that independence for India? No, that is not independence for India. So a country like India started realizing very soon that we cannot be dependent upon any country for as basic a requirement as food, and therefore it is very important that we become self-dependent, we become self-reliant, we become Atmanirbhar, you may say. And that is how you have to see green revolution. In that perspective, you have to see green revolution. Green revolution was all about using modern inputs, right, so as to be able to increase the production first of wheat, right, because that was very important, and the technology was available in various countries. So we got that technology, right, from other countries, particularly you may say Mexico, from Philippines, from, right, and we were able to sort of indigenize that technology, right, we were able to customize the technology as per the Indian conditions, and we were able to successfully bring about green revolution in certain selected areas such as Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and we were able to increase our production of wheat. Thereafter, we sort of, were able to take the benefits of green revolution or the idea of green revolution to other crops such as rice, and gradually within a matter of few years we were able to become self-sufficient in food production, which was a massive victory for a country like India, given the fact that we were so dependent on outsiders, given the fact that we were always so close to famines. Why? Because our agriculture was dependent on monsoons. If suddenly we have surplus production, if suddenly our granaries are overflowing, if suddenly famine is not a problem, if suddenly we know that we can take care of ourselves, that is a huge deal. That is a huge jump ahead so far as India is concerned. Right from 1950s to 1990s, what we will see is that agriculture's contribution to GDP will decline, but the number of people dependent on agriculture for employment will not decline as much. So as a result of which, the present problem that we are facing, that agriculture as a sector may be contributing only 15% of, let us say, India's GDP, right? But population dependent on agriculture is still more than 50%, more than 50%. That is a very big problem today. So that problem is something which started to emerge right through 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, that agriculture's production or agriculture's contribution in GDP kept going down. Why? Because industry started to contribute more to the GDP, services sector started to contribute more to the GDP. So agriculture's percentage contribution went down, but the number of jobs that should have been created in the industrial sector or in the services sector did not get created, and therefore the people whom should have been pulled out of agriculture into these sectors, that never happened, right? So as a result of which, in India we will see that the problem of poverty, the problem of inequality, the problem of disguised unemployment, the problem of underemployment, the problem of unemployment, all these problems persist in India even today. Why? Because the other sectors of economy, particularly industries and services, the number of jobs that they should have created or they could have created or they should have created, that never happened, as a result of which we are facing many problems even today. If you look at what happened in industry and trade, right, from let us say 1950 to 1990s, right? So the first important word that you need to understand is mixed economy. What is the meaning of mixed economy, right? So Prateek Kumar, you're asking, I am from art background, can I crack RBI Grade B exam? I think you can crack the RBI Grade B exam irrespective of your background, right? So when we talk about mixed economy, so the idea is that there is going to be a public sector, right, and there is going to be a private sector. That means that even the government will sort of involve itself in production activities, and even the private sector will involve itself in the production activities. That is what the meaning, broadly speaking, of mixed economy is. Why is it that the government needs to involve itself in production activity? What is the shortcoming of the private sector? What is the role that the government is going to play? What is the role that the private sector is going to play? All these critical questions are answered as a part of the course, are answered. I'm going to answer that even now. See, the idea is that in India after independence, the public sector was given a predominant role in the Indian economy. Why? Because the industrialists, the private sector was not very strong. It did not have too much capital. It did not have too much technology. The manpower was not available. The technical know-how was not available. And therefore, if we wanted to embark upon the path of industrialization, so the resources which had to be mobilized to bring about this kind of industrialization, those resources were not available at the disposal of the private sector. Who had the wherewithal or who had the ability to muster all these resources together? It was considered that Government of India, through its agencies, through its good offices, will be in a position to gather all the resources required to embark upon the path of industrialization. Therefore, public sector was given a preeminent role. Public sector led industrialization model was adopted in the country. I have highlighted IPR 1956. What is IPR 1956? Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 lays down the entire policy framework required to bring about this process of public sector led industrialization. right? So we decided that yes, public sector is going to play a very important role in many sectors. Many sectors of the economy were reserved exclusively for the operation of the public sector. There were certain sectors wherein both the public sector and the private sector could participate, and then there were certain other sectors in which only the private sector or the private sector was given a free run, that yes, private sector only will participate in those sectors, right? So we have shared all the details at the right places in the course. The idea is that this kind of decision was taken, that so far as industrialization is concerned, your public sector is going to play a very important role. Accordingly, various public sector enterprises were established. You can talk about ONGCs, you can talk about sales, you can talk about BHELs, you can talk about Gas India, the Gas Authority of India Limited. You can talk about Air India. You can talk about, you know, various hotel chains that were established. You can talk about various rubber factories that were established. You can talk about various textile industries that were established by the state. So all these industries were established. Why? Because public sector was expected to play a predominant role in the industrialization of India. Accordingly, to support the public sector, to support India's industrialization, licensing was put into place. What is the meaning of licensing? So if you are a private entrepreneur, I am a private entrepreneur, and we want to establish a new industry, let us say, then we need to take a license from the government. We need to take a permission from the government to be able to establish that industry. Why? Because apparently government knows the best what is the need of the economy. You know that we know that the resources of the economy are very meager. Therefore, in those industries should be set up which are required. They should be set up where they are required, and they should be, those industries should be producing what is actually required. So all these decisions, which kind of industry should be set up by the private sector, where should it be set up, what should it be producing, how much of that should it be producing, all these things are known to whom? It is known to the government. That kind of idea was there, and that is why licensing was put into place, so that government can have a control over our economic decisions as to what to produce, what, when to produce, how to produce, where to produce. Is the government doing that presently? आज के तारीख के अंदर is such kind of licensing required? Not really. Why? Because you can do whatever you want, wherever you want, however you want, mota moti, right? But at that point of time, immediately after independence, the idea was that the government knows best what is required. Right, we put into place a system of quotas, right? So there were a huge amount of import duties placed, huge amount of import restrictions placed, so that infant industries of India could be protected from outside competition, and they could develop their strength and ability to be able to produce, right, in a market for itself. And gradually, as the industries develop their abilities, gradually as they strengthen, right, those same industries will then be able to compete with, let us say, external behemoths, with, let us say, external multinational corporations. But until the time the infant industries of India do not learn to compete, they do not grow up, till that point of time we will protect them through import tariffs, through import restrictions. Private sector was excluded. Small scale industries were encouraged. Why? Because we wanted so that employment be generated across the length and breadth of the country. So some sectors were reserved only for the small scale sector. So only small scale industries could be established on those sectors across the length and breadth of the country. Land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship which is available across the length and breadth of the country should be mobilized, could be mobilized, and small scale industries could be set up. So these small scale industries were promoted. They were given a lot of concession. We have already spoken about import substitution. Is this industrial policy good? Is this kind of approach good? The answer is yes and no. There are certain reasons in favor of this kind of policy. India was able to achieve a strong base of basic and heavy industries through this kind of policy. India was able to establish itself, right? There were many small scale industries that were established, right? Many new products which were earlier not manufactured were being manufactured now. In India, steel production had gone up, aluminium production had gone up, electricity production had gone up, mining had gone up, everything had gone up. So there were many pros of this kind of policy which we adopted, but there were many more cons of this kind of industrial policy that we adopted. That public sector was highly inefficient, private sector was highly underdeveloped, there were very bad quality of products which are available in India, there was a lot of smuggling happening into India of good imported products, and I can go on and on and on, and we have discussed all of these things in great detail as a part of our course. So the fact of the matter is that yes, there were certain pros of the industrial policy and there were certain cons of the industrial policy. we now come to the discussion of what was the background in which we introduced liberalization, privatization and globalization reforms, right, in 1990s. Why is it, what is it that happened which forced us to sort of, bring about these reforms of liberalization, privatization and globalization? So the idea is that government of India was running a huge deficit. How is it that government of India was running a huge deficit? Right through the 80s, our expenditure was too high, was much greater than our total receipts. If my expenditure is high and my receipts are lower, year after year after year, and the gap between the expenditure and receipts is growing, as a result of which what will happen? Government will be forced to take on debt, government will be forced to borrow to be able to fulfill its expenditure requirement, right? Secondly, we are a country which is dependent on oil. We are a country which is dependent on critical technology. So if we have to import oil, if we have to import critical technology, we need to pay back in terms of foreign exchange, right? How will we be able to pay in foreign exchange? So we need to earn foreign exchange. How can we earn foreign exchange? By exporting. Was India focused upon exporting? Were Indian industries focused upon exporting? Was Indian economy good at exporting? Was it good in competing with international companies, with companies based abroad? No. So we were not able to export much and we were always importing a lot. As a result of which foreign exchange reserve was never like, a strong point of India. And there came a point of time where India's foreign exchange reserve was practically empty. No one was willing to lend to India by late 80s, early 90s. Why? Because everybody was realizing that government of India is running a huge deficit. Foreign exchange reserve doesn't have much strength and therefore it doesn't make much sense to lend any more money to India, because जो भी पैसा देंगे वो पैसा शायद वापस से नहीं आने वाला है. In this kind of a scenario, when we were brought right down onto our knees, economically speaking, we approached institutions like World Bank and IMF for a loan. So when we went to them for a loan, they said that yes, we are ready to give you a loan, but you need to sort of restructure your economy. You need to change your policies. You need to change how everything is done in your economy, in the sense that you need to adopt this new economic policy of liberalization, privatization and globalization. You need to undertake short-term stabilization measures such that your inflation is brought back into control, such that your immediate balance of payment crisis is taken care of, and you also need to take certain long-term structural measures so that your economy can become competitive, so that your industry can become competitive, so that your market can become dynamic, and these are the kind of steps that you will have to take. So India, if you are ready to undertake this new economic policy, if you are ready to undertake these reforms, then we are ready to give you loan. So obviously India agreed that okay, we will undertake all these reforms, we will implement all these reform measures, right? And you give us a loan. So we undertook liberalization, privatization and globalization. What is liberalization? Very basically speaking, I'm going to share the definition with you going ahead. But what is liberalization all about? Liberalization is all about making the rules easier for the private sector. So if we want to participate in the industry sector, if you want to participate in the financial sector, if you want to pay tax, if you want to use foreign exchange, if you want to trade, if you want to invest, it should become easier for us to do all of these things. It should become easier for us to participate, right? Government should facilitate our participation. So there should not be unnecessary restrictions on private sector in terms of which industry can they establish, where can they establish, what can they produce, how can they produce. So all these unnecessary restrictions should be abolished. Similarly, within the financial sector, banks should be allowed to function, mutual funds should be allowed to function, right? In your insurance sector, private companies should be allowed to function. In your foreign exchange market, private participants should be allowed to function. Tax rates should be reduced, right? Tax rates should be rationalized. It should be easier for me to pay my taxes, right? It should be easy for me to trade. It should be easy for me to invest. So all of these measures, which basically eases the life of the private sector, it makes it easy for the private sector to sort of participate in economic activity or undertake economic activity. All these kind of measures refer to liberalization. What is privatization? It simply means reducing government's ownership in various state-owned enterprises. So either the government of India outrightly privatizes those companies, right, or it starts to reduce its stakes in state-owned enterprises. And what is the meaning of globalization? That Indian economy should be linked very heavily with the global sector, in the sense that we should be importing what we require, what we need, and we should be exporting what we are good at manufacturing. We should be providing what we are good at, and we should be buying, or we should be bringing in what others are good at, right? So that kind of an approach should be adopted, where finance or money is freely flowing in and out of India, technology is flowing freely in and out of India, goods and services are flowing freely in and out of India, manpower is flowing freely in and out of India, right? So you have to basically make your borders porous. That doesn't mean you throw your borders open to anything and everything, but it just means that you sort of, you know, remove the restrictions, remove the iron curtain, right? That okay, this will not be allowed to come in, or that will not be allowed to go out, or aisa hoga waisa hoga. All those things need to be sort of, you know, rationalized. I'm going to share the definitions with you, and I'm going to discuss again why definitions are important. So if I have to take an assessment of economy post reforms, that what is it that we have been able to achieve 1990s downwards? So yes, definitely the GDP growth rate of India has increased, but the high GDP growth rate that we were enjoying in the last 3 odd decades, that was because of rapid growth of the services sector, right? So the growth that India enjoyed was a services sector led growth. The amount of employment that services sector can generate is quite less if you compare it with the amount of employment that a growing industry sector can generate, right? So as a result of the fact that India had a growth which was led by the services sector, enough employment did not get generated, and therefore even today we are having a problem of disguised unemployment or underemployment or unemployment in our country. There was rapid increase in foreign investment in India in terms of both foreign direct investment as well as foreign institutional investment. If you look at the FII inflow into India, in India's stock market, in India's debt market, it is absolutely phenomenal. If you look at the amount of FDI that we have been able to attract, it is not bad. It is not as great as China. It is not as great as the Asian tigers, but we have been able to attract decent amount of foreign direct investment, and we should be attracting more foreign direct investment going ahead. Our foreign exchange reserve is not a problem at all. In fact, as we are speaking, the foreign exchange reserve is almost at historical highs, right? So we are very comfortable so far as our foreign exchange reserves is concerned. I've already spoken twice or thrice about insufficient employment opportunities in India, and that is something that we really need to do something about. If you look at what has happened in the agriculture sector 1990s downwards, so you will be able to appreciate that public investment in agriculture has reduced. It is not as much as it should have been. There is a great reliance on subsidies, right? So this is a major debate that we have presented this debate as a part of our course material, that if you look at the amount of money that government of India is spending on the agriculture sector, so-called, right? So huge amount of that money is being spent in the form of subsidies, and a very small amount of money is being spent on infrastructure development required by the agriculture sector, right? So public investment has gone down in the agriculture sector. There is a greater reliance on subsidies, and the good or the benefits of those subsidies is really questionable. That is a different topic. We will be discussing that as a part of agriculture. Agriculture sector has been opened up. There is a lot of international competition that the farmers in India are facing. Are they equipped to face that kind of international competition is an open question. So all these things need to be thought about. If you look at India's industrial sector, growth rate has fluctuated. There has been slowdown. There has been a lot of competition from the foreign sector, and undoubtedly we can say that it is not as if that India's industry sector overall is globally competitive. We are facing competition from Bangladesh, from Vietnam, from China, from Ethiopia, from many of these countries. We have to pull our socks together. We will have to pull our socks up so that we can actually grow and thrive in this kind of competitive environment. We have undertaken a lot of disinvestment. A lot of government stake in state owned enterprises has been sold. Few companies have also been privatized. Going ahead, few more banks, few more PSUs may be privatized. So this is an ongoing process that we have been undertaking slowly and steadily in the last 3 decades. And of course, a lot of fiscal reforms have also been done in the last 30 years, right? Only now, because of the pandemic, our fiscal deficit calculation has been thrown out of the window, but gradually since 2003 downwards, since the enactment of FRBM Act, we have been able to reduce the revenue deficit. We have been able to keep the fiscal deficit under control. Of course, it is highly questionable that how is it that we have achieved this reduction in fiscal deficit in India, because it seems that our expenditure on healthcare and education, our expenditure on agriculture, public investment, and our expenditure in the form of capital outlays and capital expenditure, these expenditures, which are critical expenditures, are at very, very low levels, right? So this critical expenditure has not been increased, right? And government has basically cut down these kind of expenditures to bring its fiscal deficit under control, or keep its fiscal deficit under control on paper. So the kind of fiscal reforms that we have had, they are really questionable in the sense that how have we achieved? Because what we should have done was, government should have increased its tax base, government should have increased its receipts, government should have cut down its wasteful expenditure, and government should have prioritized its important expenditure. But what has really happened is that government at various levels have not been able to increase their receipts as much as they should have from, let us say, tax resources. They have definitely not been able to cut down all their wasteful expenditure, and they have definitely not been able to give priority to important expenditures that they should have given priority to. So yes, we have undertaken fiscal reforms, but the quality of fiscal reforms undertaken is highly questionable. So in a very brief snapshot, as much as I can say, I have provided you the entire economic history of India. Of course, as a part of our course, as a part of the fodder material, as a part of the question answer set that we have provided, we have discussed all these things and many more things in great details. But yes, this is the snapshot of it. Now I would like to emphasize that it is very, very important that you know your basic definitions well, because if you have to type an answer out very quickly, then your basic definitions should be very good. आपको सोचना नहीं पड़ना चाहिए. For example, if they ask you that what was the nature of the economy after independence, so it was a mixed economy. That means that we were relying on both markets and government to allocate resources, right? In theory, we could have had a pure market economy or a pure command economy. What is pure market economy? In which all allocation decisions are taken by market forces. What is pure command economy? It is an economy in which all allocation decisions are taken only and only by the state, by the government. But in real world, all economies are mixed economies which rely on both markets and government for allocation decisions, right? So market allocate resources through voluntary choices, government allocates through involuntary taxes, laws, restrictions, and regulations, right? So we adopted a mixed economy. So if they ask you what is the meaning of mixed economy, you should be able to very quickly tell them what is the meaning of mixed economy. We were a planned economy. What is the meaning of we being a planned economy? It is an economy which relies heavily on central planning by government, right? It is a type of command economy in which government uses its coercive powers to implement central planning allocation decisions. So we were a planned economy. So you should be able to quickly describe the meaning of planned economy in beautiful words, and these are the beautiful words that you should be able to use. If they ask you to write a note on green revolution, you should not think अच्छा green revolution क्या था, green revolution क्यों था. Green revolution is great increase in production of food grains, especially wheat and rice. How? By using new high yielding varieties of seeds in mid 20th century. Good success was seen in Mexico and the Indian subcontinent based upon usage of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. There are concerns about cost, there are concerns about environmental effects, there are concerns that poor farmers have not been able to benefit, right? So so the idea is that this is the kind of definition. If you know about green revolution and if you can quickly put this definition out, then you will be in a position to be able to write good answers in a fast manner. India had a Hindu rate of growth right through the pre-liberalization era. So right through 60s and 70s and 80s, India was considered to be having a Hindu rate of growth. If they ask you what is the meaning of Hindu rate of growth, or if you get an opportunity to talk about it, Hindu rate of growth is a term referring to low annual growth rate of economy before liberalization of 1991, right? We stagnated, our growth stagnated around 3.5% right from 50s to 80s, while per capita income growth averaged only 1.3%. What am I trying to say? That you should know your basic definitions and basic concepts very, very well, right? You should have the basic summary in mind so that you are in a position to give good answers. If you are talking about the various reform measures that were undertaken, so you should know what is the definition of stabilization measures, you should know what is the definition of structural reform policies, you should know what is the definition of economic liberalization, right? I have already discussed with you about liberalization. If I have to give you a formal definition of liberalization, so liberalization means promoting free trade, promoting deregulation, elimination of subsidies, elimination of price controls, elimination of rationing systems, because all this is government interference in the functioning of free market. It is about downsizing, it is about increasing privatization, it is about, you know, adjustment policies which developing countries have adopted, right? this economic liberalization has often been a condition for lending. So if I went to World Bank or IMF for a loan, they asked me to undertake economic liberalization. They asked my government to become non-interventionist. They asked my government to allow a laissez-faire approach to thrive, in the sense that allow the market forces to function, allow the market forces to determine the allocation of resources. It will help in spurring growth. It will help in accelerating poverty reduction. That is what economic liberalization is all about. What is the meaning of privatization? What is the meaning of globalization has also been discussed with you over here. Again, I would like to emphasize that it is very important to have basic conceptual clarity in economics. If you are having that, your ability to write good answers will come out, and that will help you fetch good marks in the examination. That is what you have to do. Now, moving ahead, I would like to discuss one question with you. Right, I've already discussed a great deal about the kind of strategy adopted by India to bring about economic development after independence. I would like to formally discuss it in the form of question as well. कि अगर आपको ये question पूछा गया, right, कि discuss in detail the strategy adopted by India to bring about economic development after independence, तो आप कैसे इस question को adopt करेंगे? And in answering this question, I am going to use the approach that Anchit sir has pioneered of giving micro questions, right? So when you start this answer, you have to start by writing an introduction. What will be your introduction? In your introduction, in my opinion, you should very briefly state what is it that the India strategy was about economic development after independence. Yani ki what was exactly the strategy? So our strategy was rapid industrialization by implementing centrally prepared 5-year plans that involved raising a massive amount of resources and investing them in the creation of large industrial state-owned enterprises. This was the broad strategy, very broadly speaking. Of course, is this the complete strategy? No, but this is an introduction. Introduction has to be powerful. Introduction has to be spot on. Introduction has to be something which catches the attention of the examiner and forces the examiner to read your answer. Mark my words, no examiner is interested in reading anybody's answer unless this answer is a good answer, at least an average or an above average answer. So start in a powerful manner, and this, in my opinion at least, is a powerful way of starting by saying that our strategy was rapid industrialization by implementing centrally prepared 5-year plans involving raising a massive amount of resources and investing those resources in the creation of large industrial state-owned enterprises. Now the question is that why is it exactly that we adopted this kind of strategy? And here we have to use micro questions. Why is it that we prioritize industrialization over agriculture? Why is it that we prioritize public sector undertakings? Why is it that we prioritize heavy and basic goods industries? Why is it that we prioritize protectionism? Why is it that we adopted licensing? We have to answer these questions because this is the fundamental tenet of our strategy. This is the underpinning of our strategy. Strategy इसी के इन्हीं decisions के ऊपर तो बैठी थी इंडिया की कि why is it that we wanted industrialization? Why did we choose industrialization? Because we believed that industrial sector offers greatest scope of growth in production, greatest scope of growth in GDP. We thought that eventually growth in agriculture will run out of steam, will run into a dead end. Why? Because खा के कितना खाएंगे, खाना खा के कितना खाएंगे, right? Therefore, we thought that we will prioritize industrialization over agriculture. That was the first thing. Second thing, why was investment in PSUs undertaken? Because we wanted to adopt a socialist pattern of society, and at the same time, we realized, we acknowledged that yes, India's private sector is weak. It does not have the capability to be able to invest and bring about the kind of industrialization that India wants to see for itself. Why is it that we relied on basic and heavy goods? Why is it that we wanted to develop these industries first? Because we wanted to reduce our reliance on import of basic and heavy industrial good. Why did we adopt protectionism? Because we wanted to protect our infant industries. We did not want them to be hampered by production. We wanted them to learn how to produce. Therefore, we wanted to give them time to grow. Therefore, we adopted protectionism. Why is it that we adopted licensing system? Because the resources were meager. Government was eager to keep the private sector under control so that private sector's energy could also be channelized in the right direction as per the requirements of the country, which obviously the government knew well at that point of time. That is what government believed, right? If we take the discussion ahead, why were land reforms undertaken? Even land reform was an important part of our strategy. We believed from the bottom of our heart that if the actual tillers become landowners, their incentives to perform their activity well will increase, their incentives to invest in their land will increase. If we are able to organize small farmers into cooperative societies, they will be able to come together as a collective. They will be able to pool together their resources, they will be able to undertake their activities in a good manner, and they will also be able to obtain a higher crop price through the power of bargaining through the large numbers of a collective. And we believed honestly that through this kind of an approach, we will be able to distribute asset ownership across the length and breadth of the country, and therefore we may be able to alleviate the problem of poverty amongst the peasants. These were the ideas which were sort of the underpinnings of the strategy that we adopted. You have to obviously conclude your answer always, and conclude your answer by again very briefly mentioning the achievements and failure of the above strategy adopted by our country, right? So I've discussed the entire strategy with you. I have given you entire blueprint of what we did, how we did, when we did, why we did. And if you read our notes, if you read our fodder material, if you read everything, then very quickly you will be able to grasp the entire subject matter, and you will be able to perform well in the examination, is my opinion. I have placed a homework question in front of you. What do you mean by liberalization? What led to liberalization of Indian economy? Discuss. So I have discussed one question in detail with you. I am requesting you that please answer that question, and I have given you a homework question, and I am going to again request you that please answer this question. I will open up this session now for some questions that I can answer from your end, right? Amit Yadav, you are saying that this session was very fruitful. Thank you, Amit, for your kind words of appreciation. Amit Yadav, it is my humble request that please answer homework questions and comment it in the comment section of this video. Do that. That will be very, very helpful for you. राइट रविंदर यादव, सर वर्ड लिमिट होता है क्या डिस्क्रिप्टिव में? जी बिल्कुल वर्ड लिमिट होता है. इन माय ओपिनियन बेस्ड अपॉन व्हाट हैपेंस इन अदर एग्जामिनेशन, इफ यू आर राइटिंग अ 10 मार्क्स का आंसर, यू शुड राइट दैट 10 मार्क का आंसर इन 130 to maybe 150 words. If you are writing a 15 marks का आंसर, then you should answer that question in 230 to 250 words. That is the kind of word limit that you should have in mind. प्रैक्टिस करके आप देखिए, जितने ज्यादा वर्ड्स आप लिख सके उतने आपको लिखने की कोशिश करनी चाहिए. अच्छे से अच्छे वर्ड्स को आपको लिखने की कोशिश करनी चाहिए. Pooja, your question is, sir, how do we practice for descriptive? Like it will not be on pen paper, then how do we manage? Pooja, it is very important to be digitally connected in these times, right? It is important to practice either on a personal computer or practice on a laptop, or you may have to go to a cyber cafe to practice, right? But that is the only way you can practice in the true sense in the requirement of this examination, कि आपको practice भी type कर करके ही करना चाहिए. I would tell you one thing that I tell all the students of EduTap, that what you should do is that जो भी fodder material हमने आपको provide करा है, you open that fodder material, simultaneously open a word document, right? आप fodder material हो जो हमने आपको provide करा उसको पढ़िए, पढ़ते पढ़ते उसकी प्रेसी बनाइए, टाइप करते हुए चलिए, पढ़ते पढ़ते प्रेसी बनाइए, टाइप करते हुए चलिए. उससे क्या होगा कि वॉट एवर यू आर रीडिंग, यू हैव क्रिएटेड अ माइक्रो नोट और अ प्रेसी ऑफ दैट, यू हैव डन टाइपिंग प्रैक्टिस. वो कर करके आपके दिमाग के अंदर वो सारी चीजें फिट हो जाएगी, अंडरस्टैंडिंग डेवलप हो जाएगी, एंड यू विल बी एबल टू रिवाइज दोज माइक्रो नोट्स मल्टीपल नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स. सो एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ विच व्हाट विल हैपन इज दैट व्हेन यू एक्चुअली सिट इन द एग्जामिनेशन टू टाइप योर आंसर्स आउट, you will be confident that I have been doing exactly this in the last 20 days before the examination. Therefore, I believe that I can write these answers, I can type these answers. Therefore, I believe that I can pass this examination. And having that kind of belief, having that kind of faith, having that kind of practice will be very, very helpful for you in the examination. That is my answer to your question, Pooja. I hope that my answer is very clear to you, right? Pratik, I have already given answer to your question. Right, so I hope that all this really helps, and I'm hoping that you all are going to answer these homework questions. With this, we'll bring this session to an end. We will see you again with a new video on a new subject. Thank you very much. All the very best, and Jai Hind.